Respected listener, if you've ever felt your heart race for no reason, or a strange heaviness in your chest that fades before you can even describe it, listen carefully. Because what I'm about to tell you has the power to save your life, or the life of someone you love. You see, a heart attack rarely begins with drama. It whispers, it tests you, it hides behind little aches and odd sensations that most people ignore, until one day, it's too late. Every day, I meet people who look perfectly healthy. They laugh, they work, they say, "Doctor, I feel fine." And yet, behind that calm heartbeat lies silent tension, small electrical storms waiting for the right moment to strike. We often think a heart attack will arrive like thunder, sudden and unmistakable. But in truth, it's more like fog. It creeps in quietly, cloaked in normality, until you can no longer tell what's real and what's dangerous. I've seen it happen. A middle-aged man who thought he had indigestion after dinner. A mother who blamed her shoulder pain on a long day of chores. A young woman who brushed off her fatigue as stress. They all had one thing in common: they didn't listen to the early signs, and those signs were not loud. They were gentle, subtle, almost polite, but deadly in their patience. The heart tries to speak to us before it breaks. It gives us small warnings, not to frighten us, but to ask for help. Sometimes it's a strange discomfort in the chest, not sharp, not stabbing, but heavy, like someone pressing a hand there. Sometimes it's pain that travels to the jaw, to the arm, to the back, as if the body is confused about where the suffering truly lies. And other times, it's not pain at all, it's unease. A sense that something isn't right, even when all tests seem normal. What makes these signs so dangerous is that they mimic life. You tell yourself it's just the weather, just anxiety, just a skipped meal. But the heart doesn't lie. When it's struggling, it sends signals through every nerve and vessel, pleading for attention. It's in those moments of doubt, when you feel off, but can't explain why, that your decision to listen or ignore becomes a matter of survival. In my years of practice, I've learned that the body is far wiser than we give it credit for. The first clue doesn't come from machines or monitors, it comes from within. A subtle rhythm change, a fatigue that feels deeper than usual, a short breath while climbing stairs you used to handle easily. The danger begins long before the collapse, and the tragedy is that so many people sense it, but silence it. They push through. They convince themselves it's nothing. But what if, just what if, that small discomfort, that tiny pulse of pain, is your heart's way of saying, "I'm struggling. Please notice me." Would you still brush it aside? Because when your heart starts to falter, it doesn't always scream. It whispers. And those whispers, they're the difference between being saved in time or never getting the chance to say goodbye. Every signal, every ache, every moment of breathlessness tells a story. The problem is, most people never learn to listen. They assume heart attacks only happen to others, to older people, to smokers, to those with obvious risk factors. But that's a dangerous myth. The truth is, the modern world is quietly breaking hearts. Through stress, poor sleep, processed food, and emotional exhaustion that no medical test can fully measure. And as we ignore those signals, as we drown them in caffeine or painkillers or excuses, the heart keeps working, wounded and weary, until it can't anymore. So before we move further, I want you to do something. Take a deep breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. Listen to that rhythm inside you. That's your life, fragile, strong, and constantly asking for care. Because the next few moments, the things I'll share with you, might just help you recognize the silent alarms before disaster strikes. These are not random facts. These are truths drawn from real lives, real pain, and real second chances. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling a strange weight in your chest. Not pain, not tightness exactly, just something you can't name. You shrug it off, take a shower, sip your tea, and tell yourself it's probably stress. Hours later it fades. You feel fine. But that faint heaviness was not random. It was your heart testing its limits, signaling through a network of nerves and vessels that it's struggling to keep the rhythm steady. One of the earliest warnings is fatigue. Not the tiredness you feel after a long day, but a deep exhaustion that clings to you, even after rest. You wake up tired, move slower, feel drained for no clear reason. It's as if your energy is leaking away somewhere unseen. That's because when your heart starts to weaken, it struggles to pump oxygen effectively. Every muscle, every organ, begins to feel that lack of fuel. But since fatigue is so common in modern life, we almost never suspect the heart. We blame work, we blame sleep, we blame life. Then comes breathlessness. You're climbing stairs, talking, even laughing, and suddenly you're short of breath. You stop, take a break, maybe even joke about being out of shape, but deep inside, your heart is quietly gasping for help. It's a signal many people dismiss, until one day it hits hard. That terrifying moment when you can't catch your breath, and the world starts to spin. And then there's the quiet pressure. The one that doesn't come with a scream, but with a whisper. A sensation in the chest that's hard to describe. Some call it tightness. Others say it feels like something's sitting on them, refusing to let go. It can last a few minutes, disappear, and come back days later. But every time it returns, it's your body giving you another chance to listen. What makes these signs so tricky is that they're often mild at first. They come and go. They hide behind normalcy. And we humans were masters of denial. We'll say it's gas, it's anxiety, it's aging. Anything but the truth that something sacred inside us is faltering. You see, the heart doesn't want to fail. It's built to endure, to beat more than 100,000 times a day, to push life through your veins, no matter what you put it through. But even the strongest heart has limits. High stress, poor diet, lack of movement, emotional strain. These things chip away at it silently. And one day, the signs start to surface, almost pleading for mercy. There's also the strange discomfort that travels. Pain that begins in the chest, but moves to the arm, the shoulder, the neck, even the jaw. Sometimes it's not pain at all. It's tingling, a dull ache, or numbness that seems disconnected from the heart entirely. That's what makes it so deceptive. People rush to the dentist, thinking it's a tooth problem, or to the orthopedist for shoulder pain. They don't realize their heart is crying out through those distant nerves. And then there's nausea, dizziness, cold sweat, symptoms that feel like flu, like food poisoning, like anything but a heart in distress. These moments often pass quickly, but they leave behind a strange unease, a sense of imbalance that's easy to forget, until it returns stronger. But the body remembers. Every skipped beat, every surge of adrenaline, every missed signal adds up. And the day you finally feel something sharp and sudden, that's not when it begins. That's when it ends. The real story started days, weeks, even months earlier, when your heart whispered, and you didn't hear it. What I want you to take from this isn't fear. It's awareness. Because these signs aren't just warnings, they're invitations. Your heart is asking you to slow down, to pay attention, to return to yourself before it's too late. When you recognize these early signals and act, when you see a doctor, when you check your blood pressure, when you choose to rest instead of push through, you're not being weak. You're being wise. You're giving your heart the chance to heal before it breaks. But too often, we wait for proof. A test result, a crisis, a collapse. We forget that prevention doesn't announce itself with sirens. It's quiet, subtle. Like the voice of someone who loves you and doesn't want to scare you, but needs you to listen. Because when the heart finally screams, it's usually in the emergency room. And that's why this conversation must go deeper. Because beneath these physical signs lies something even more dangerous. The hidden emotional and mental stress that quietly poisons the heart from within. There's a kind of heart damage that no scan can fully capture. The kind that begins not in your arteries, but in your thoughts. In today's world, the heart is not just breaking from cholesterol or sugar, it's breaking from silence, from pressure, from the weight of holding too much for too long. Every unspoken worry, every sleepless night, every suppressed emotion becomes a pulse of tension echoing through your chest. You might not feel it immediately, but your heart does. It feels it when your stress hormones surge. It feels it when you skip meals, when you push through exhaustion, when you tell yourself, "I'm fine," while your body begs you to rest. I've met people who had perfect test results, clear arteries, strong blood pressure, normal ECG, and yet their hearts were heavy. Their lives were filled with quiet storms, toxic relationships, endless deadlines, unhealed grief. And slowly, their hearts began to falter, not from disease, but from despair. We've built a world that praises productivity, but punishes peace. We glorify, hustle, grind, no days off. But the heart doesn't understand those words. It only knows rhythm, balance, flow. When you break that rhythm, with too much stress, too little rest, it begins to stumble. At first, it's harmless, a skipped beat, a quick flutter, a momentary unease. But over time, those moments stitch together into something dangerous. You see, emotional pain doesn't vanish, it converts. The anger you swallow, the fear you hide, the loneliness you pretend doesn't exist, all of it transforms into physical strain. Your heart tightens when you're anxious. It races when you're afraid. It slows when you lose hope. These are not metaphors. They are measurable physiological reactions. That's why one of the earliest signs of heart trouble isn't pain. It's restlessness. You can't sleep properly. You feel your pulse when you shouldn't. You sense something off, though you can't point to it. You become sensitive to small things, noise, temperature, even emotions. It's as if your body is on high alert, waiting for something to go wrong. And in truth, it is. I remember one patient, a young man, just in his 30s. Fit, no family history, no obvious risk factors. Yet he would wake every night at 3 a.m, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. He thought it was anxiety. The tests showed nothing critical. But one day, during his morning run, he collapsed. Thankfully, he survived. And when I saw him later, he said something I'll never forget. "Doctor, my body was warning me, but I was too busy to listen." That's the tragedy of our times. We've learned to listen to notifications, not sensations. We notice messages on our phones faster than messages from our hearts. And when we finally pause, it's often because we're forced to. But it doesn't have to be that way. The heart is remarkably forgiving. It wants to heal. Even when you've ignored it for years, a small change can begin to reverse the damage. A walk in the evening, a few deep breaths, a conversation you've been postponing, letting go of what's been poisoning your peace. These small acts may seem insignificant, but to your heart, they are oxygen. And perhaps the most dangerous symptom of all isn't physical or emotional. It's denial. The refusal to believe that something could happen to you. You might tell yourself you're too young, too fit, too healthy. But heart disease doesn't always follow logic. It follows lifestyle. And lifestyle is where we lose the quiet battle. So if you've been feeling more tired than usual, if your chest feels strange, even for a moment, if your breath shortens, your mood shifts, or you sense something you can't explain, don't wait. The greatest mistake is thinking you'll deal with it tomorrow. Because tomorrow isn't promised. Your heart is both an organ and a storyteller. Every beat carries the rhythm of your emotions, your habits, your choices. And when that rhythm starts to falter, it's not just about blocked arteries. It's about a life that's lost its harmony. But harmony can be restored. The key lies in recognizing that your body doesn't speak in words. It speaks in sensations. And when those sensations change, even slightly, it's never random. It's never meaningless. It's your warning bell, soft at first, then louder, until you finally listen. Because at the end of the day, your heart doesn't want to surprise you. It wants to stay with you. To beat faithfully, quietly, through all the seasons of your life. And that's why in this final part, I'll share how to truly listen. How to catch these subtle signs before they become suffering. And how to protect the most loyal friend you'll ever have. There comes a moment in every person's life when silence becomes dangerous. When the body's whispers can no longer be ignored. That moment doesn't come with lightning or drama. It comes quietly. When you're sitting alone and feel something you can't quite explain. A strange pressure, a skip beat, a sudden wave of weakness. That's the heart asking one last time to be heard. The truth is, most people don't die from the first warning. They die from the second, or the third, or the fourth, because they ignored the first one. The early signs are not random discomforts, they are patterns. Patterns your body repeats in hope that you'll pay attention. If your chest feels heavy after a meal, if your left arm tingles now and then, if climbing stairs leaves you unusually breathless, those are not coincidences. They are your heart's diary entries, written in discomfort instead of ink. We like to think heart attacks belong to someone else's story. The old, the overweight, the unlucky. But I've seen them strike teachers, soldiers, mothers, artists, athletes. The heart does not discriminate. It cares only about balance. And when that balance is broken, no amount of denial can restore it. So how do we truly listen? It begins with humility. The courage to admit that our bodies are not machines. When you feel something off, don't argue with it. Don't drown it in coffee or excuses. Observe it, track it, notice what triggers it. If the symptoms repeat, even faintly, get checked. A simple test can change everything. The tragedy is not in discovering a problem. The tragedy is in discovering it too late. Listening also means caring before crisis. It means giving your heart what it needs, not what's convenient. Movement that brings joy, not punishment. Food that nourishes, not numbs. Rest that heals, not just sleep that escapes. It means finding moments of stillness in a world that thrives on chaos. Because stillness is where your heart resets. I've watched countless patients transform, not through medicine, but through awareness. The ones who learned to notice. The ones who stopped pushing pain aside. They didn't just avoid heart attacks, they changed their lives. They began to breathe slower, eat mindfully, love deeply. And the heart responded, like a friend finally being understood. Because beneath all the science and medicine lies something more profound: connection. The heart doesn't beat for survival alone. It beats for purpose, for laughter, for kindness, for the people and moments that make life worth living. When you neglect those, when you let stress or pride or fear consume your days, your heart starts to forget why it beats at all. That's why recognizing the early warning signs is more than medical awareness. It's emotional awakening. The heaviness in your chest, the shortness of breath, the fatigue, the discomfort, the cold sweat, the nausea, the restlessness. They are not your enemies. They are messages. Messages that say, slow down, breathe, listen, and when you do, something extraordinary happens. The panic fades. The pulse steadies. The body starts to heal because it finally knows you're listening. That's the power of awareness. It turns fear into control. I won't pretend it's easy. The world moves fast, and we are all taught to be strong, to endure. But strength isn't ignoring pain. Strength is facing it before it breaks you. When you choose to listen early, you choose life. Not just survival, but a life filled with time, with love, with second chances. So as we reach the end of this message, remember this: your heart has been with you through every laugh, every loss, every moment you thought you couldn't go on. It never stopped fighting for you. Don't wait until it's too late to fight for it, because the early warning signs are not just symptoms. They are opportunities. Opportunities to live longer, love harder, and finally treat your heart not as an afterthought, but as the miracle it truly is. If you're still here, listening, it means something inside you understands how fragile and precious this life truly is. The human heart, your heart, has never stopped fighting for you. From the day you were born, it has worked without rest, through laughter, heartbreak, sickness, and silence. It has carried you through every emotion you've ever known. And all it asks in return is your attention. We live in an age where everything moves fast, where we measure success by how much we can endure. But endurance means nothing if it costs you the rhythm of your life. You can replace many things: a job, a car, a phone, but you can't replace a heartbeat. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's why awareness isn't fear, it's love. Love for yourself, love for the people who would break if you were gone. So, from this moment on, make a quiet promise. A promise to never again ignore the signals your body sends. To notice when your heart whispers, before it ever has to scream. To choose rest over rush, peace over pressure, healing over habit. You owe that not only to yourself, but to every person who needs you alive and well. Go for that check up you've been delaying. Take that walk you keep postponing. Speak kindly to yourself. And if something feels wrong, even slightly wrong, don't brush it away. Seek help, because strength is not silence. Strength is action. I've seen lives saved by awareness. Fathers who got tested just in time. Mothers who listened to their bodies. Young people who refused to let pride stand in the way of survival. Every one of them has something in common. They didn't wait for the perfect moment to care. They acted. And that made all the difference. Your heart deserves the same grace. It deserves your protection, your attention, your love. Because as long as it beats, there's hope. for healing, for joy, for one more sunrise. So tonight, before you sleep, place a hand on your chest. Feel that steady rhythm. That is life, your life, reminding you it's still here, still fighting, still waiting for you to take care of it. This is your reminder, your warning, your chance. Don't ignore it. Because somewhere inside you, right now, your heart is whispering,